So I am here with Mordecai Holtz, who is the co-founder of Blue Thread Marketing. Thank you for joining me this morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Great.
So besides being the best dressed person on Twitter, are you wearing cufflinks by the way today?
Today I'm actually not. I usually do
that's,
but
that's
today
so
I'm actually not
disappointing.
wearing. It's the problem with cufflinks is in the summer, especially here in Israel, is that it gets warm and it's so very uncomfortable to wear cufflinks and start sweating. So depending on the weather, you kind of change it up a little bit. But thank you for the comment. I am a big fan of wearing French cuff shirts. It's actually from I don't know if he still works, but he used to work in the SEO industry. He would get on stage and he would talk, and he said he would wear jeans and a cufflink shirt.
Nice.
And I was like, well, I love jeans and I love wearing cufflink shirts. And I was like, well, I can't know if I could pull it off in Israel. And then I started doing it. I'm like, let's do it. This is my thing. This is my brand.
Nice.
So I started doing it. So yeah, it's great. So
Cool.
Yeah, that's my thing.
So I'll make sure to interview you in January next time.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah. Okay. So let's just jump into this. Obviously, Facebook and the privacy concerns are a major issue. What's your take on the I know you just published an article about this, how Zuckerberg should have, or how he should react after or with the interviews or the questioning. Can you just run me through that a little bit?
Sure. So 2 days ago, the article you're mentioning was 2 days ago. I got my first big, publication on Fast Company. It was a conversation that really started with someone that I met, and we were talking late one night, a couple of nights ago, and that journalist said, "Oh, you have a good idea, good concept, much more on social media, less about the actual, less about the privacy, but what social media and how can Mark Zuckerberg kind of talk about and make sure that his audience is still interested to people beyond just the journalists who are going to be there or the tech companies and things like that, but more in a social media perspective." So I offered my ideas, and she said, "You should write it," and I turned it over quickly and wrote my article about why he needs to be, besides the general information that a lot of publications are going to write about. And Fast Company actually wrote an article about what this means. I really kind of focused more on what Mark Zuckerberg as a person can do to use his own platforms to kind of engage with his audience and show how real he is and things like that. I think the last 2 days of hearings were painful for me. I mean, I was watching them and I felt like it was just clear, and everyone's been talking about it now. It was clear that the Congress, people in Congress and the people who were in the session were clearly either uneducated or they were just not uninformed. We'll call it that, and they just didn't know how to really understand what was going on. And now you can watch all these little clips of the videos, clips of the sessions. It's clear. My favorite line is, "What happens when I'm emailing on WhatsApp?" That's my favorite line. That's my favorite line of the entire show. Whatever amount of hours of sessions, it's just like, if you can say that, then basically the entire conversation is done right there. I also think it was like, in my opinion, again, there's a lot of people who say something else, but in my opinion, I think it was just a waste of time in terms of resources and energy and amount of time invested just to get. It's an important debate. I'm not minimizing the debate, but I think the public forum of it, ironically, 90% of the people who were watching it were watching on Facebook Live. They were all watching on Facebook. They're all watching what's going on. So like, and the politicians and the people in government who are kind of like debating with Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook are actually, they all run campaigns on Facebook to promote their own message. So you're really looking at it's like this weird, and it's clear that this is the indication of what's going on is they are going to use this platform. It's going to continue to be used, and there needs some policy to be put in place. I'm not denying that, but it could have been done in let's call it closed door session with people who actually know what they're talking about and not just getting information from their advisors and their, whoever they're using and the face of what the government represents and who they are talking about and who the people that they represent could have looked much better if they just said, as we spoke. And many times throughout the first day, at least when I was listening, the first day they were all saying is, "Oh, we met you before, Mr. Zuckerberg. We heard you. We talked to you before, this big meeting and this big session and the hearing and all these things." And I'm like, well, if you did it before, why do you even have to do this big public thing? Like, just close doors, do it, shake hands. Everyone's going to be nice. Everyone's going to do it. And on both sides, you could clearly see that they had no idea what they're talking about. I mean, they didn't know the forum. Mark Zuckerberg knows Facebook and knows the technology, but he knows also that the question they were asking were just not, They were just not there. And the people on the other side is they didn't know all the information on their side. The Congress people and the people at the committee didn't know what they were saying. And, it was just I think it's important. It's a great conversation, but I think it's not necessarily the form that needs to be done. So that's that. But my opinion in general is I think that there was a mistake. It was clear that there was a mistake in terms of the privacy settings, and everyone knows about it.
Well, it's not just his mistake. I mean, it's really everybody's mistake. I mean, I'm
Yeah,
sure
right. Everybody's
Ed's
mistake.
targeting. I think he even said that at one point.
Right, exactly. And I think it's on the user to know, like, if the technology, if the information is there and it's public and you're using a platform that's free, everyone knows that once the platform is free and you agree to the terms of service, which most people, just kind of roll over and like kind of skim over if they look at it at all, and then just say, yes, I agree, because they want to get on Facebook or whatever the platform may be. They say yes. And once they say yes to that, then what have you've accepted something that's just completely, you're at your own risk.
Right. I mean, it's only good faith to the user at that point. I mean, he's lucky that he didn't get placed in front of the EU. It's only Congress.
Right, exactly. And I think, there was once a couple of months ago, there was a company that was providing Wi-Fi in some city, I think it was, or some area. And as a joke, that in the terms of service, the person agreed to connect to the Wi-Fi, and in the terms of service, just to prove the point of why people don't read it, they wrote that they agreed to clean the streets of the city, just like some little funny line.
Nice.
But it proves the point that people don't read the terms of service, and it's on us, the users, to accept those. If you accept the terms of service, whatever it says in there, it's on you to really be responsible for what gets done after that, the information, the data, and that gets collected, and that's fair. It's fair game. You pay, just like the ads that you pay for on radio, you're targeting certain audiences. You might not get to the level of targeting that you may want, or the granular targeting that you can get on Facebook, but it's still there.
Well, in this case, it sort of regulates itself. I mean, if users don't like the terms of the service, I mean, they should be a little bit clear. I mean, that you're reading through fine print of like 300 pages. It's like, it's like my brother-in-law who actually read the contract for his house. No one actually reads the contract for your house, but
exactly. Right. So I think it's there. It's there, and I think there's got to be some sort of like, everyone uses the word TLDR kind of like thing, like the short version of it before you get to the details of it. So have some sort of summary, which is like 5 bullet points of what you agree to, with like linkable text, so that way if you want to read the full version of it, you just click right away. But it's on us, the users, and the consumers, to really understand the terms of service. And if we agree to it, we accept that, and we have to accept that in today's digital age. We use Gmail, we use Google, we use Facebook, we use whatever digital platform we're using to connect and to create that global community and break down the walls of, the traditional walls, and kind of create the wonderful global community. It's on us to really understand that information is being stored and collected. In this case, it was a mistake.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
I was going to say, in this case, it was a mistake on, that they allowed it to get stored somewhere outside of their own system, and he admitted to that and he apologized for it, and he'll make it right. But I think there's a lot of information that is not necessarily on Facebook's. It's not their issue; it's more the user issue, and I think he was trying to deliver that message, but I don't necessarily think that they heard that.
I don't think I'm not sure it's a message people want to hear.
Right.
Do you think that the terms of service were clear? I think what's going to happen now is you're basically going to see the market sort of regulate itself. Users are upset. He's going to have to change something somewhere, somehow. Otherwise, there will be a fallout to a certain extent. If those terms of service were clear on the outset, could this have been avoided?
Yeah, I think it could have been, might not be avoided, because this is kind of thing definitely, might not be avoidable. And there's always be situations.
I don't mean I mean like the issue in general.
Yeah, I think it could have been avoided, and I think that is, in terms of the startup, or we'll call it the tech community in general, their responsibility now is to kind of clarify the terms of service, to kind of give the short version of it at the beginning, say these are the basic terms. If you want more information, click here. We'll give you all the list, the whole legalese that everyone needs to have. But I think it could have definitely been to Facebook, but in general, big tech companies' responsibility. Big tech companies could have been avoided and been less in the situation, because they said we gave it to them, and then you say and this is what we did. And I think that's where the shift will be. I mean, the policy, that will be the shift on both sides, and I think that will make both sides more comfortable, because no question that there's no question that everyone's going to use Facebook until there's other platforms that agree. But right now, this
Right.
This is the massive platform, including all their, WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagram, all these great tools that everyone uses on a day-to-day basis. That's the only way it's going to really be, set in motion.
Does this change Facebook? Does this change ad targeting in general?
It will. It will definitely change. Definitely change targeting because now, first of all, Zuckerberg opened up the door for potentially creating like an ads-free version of it for pay,
Right.
which is fine. That's the first thing. But second of all, I think it's going to change because people are going to now be more careful of what information they're willing to share to the public domain. So that's an important step, and I think that's important in two ways. One is it's important because people are going to be taking a little bit more responsibility, which I think is up until now they may have in some people, but most people didn't. And
Right.
the other thing is I think it's also important for them to know that if they don't change the settings for whatever reason and they decide to either ignore it or they're just naive and they don't know how to, then they have to be willing to accept the fact that this is going to, the data that they promote or that they publicize will be used to their, to kind of create personalization and create content and create ads and potential revenue sources for the businesses that are targeting them.
Right.
That's now become much more public and much more aware, and it's not like it's not the whole 1984 scene, but it's much more of that kind of people now are much more accepting to that. Are accepting to it, and will be more comfortable with it because they now know that this has been the public forum for it. Like there's just been this public cry of it. So.
At this point, because it's more conscious and because people are aware of it and because people want to change,
right?
Are you going to see other people being dragged in? I mean, look, Google is the king of this, right?
Yeah, Google. Google. Right, Google was the first one. I honestly think Google was the first ones, and then Facebook kind of followed suit. Not because they copied what Google was doing, but much more because the platform. That's the way the platform is built.
Right.
But I think Google was the first one. Facebook is just more public about it because I think people still are not sure what Facebook does. Like even though everyone uses Gmail and everyone uses the Gmail's platform and all this entire Google suite, I think they were uncomfortable with the Facebook, because with Facebook's way of doing it, and even Google, and I think Facebook has an advantage here because Facebook has much more granular data than Google does.
Right.
Because there's this deeper information that people don't have necessarily on Google. In other words, you can get certain targeting on Google that is almost limiting to with it now. Maybe there's more, but it limits to a certain amount of deep. We'll call it like emotional, intelligence. We'll call it like marriage status, age you'll get on Google, but maybe marital status, kids, your political views and things like that. Because even though the data is being stored, Google never really took advantage of it, and Facebook is taking advantage of it, and now that's where these things are really kind of progressing.
Interesting. I mean, to Google's credit, at least they've kind of made their ability to turn on and off those settings a little bit more public. I mean, Facebook should have taken a little lesson from that one, possibly.
Right. Absolutely. I think that's where it's gonna happen. And now, it's gonna shift. There's no question that things are gonna change. No question that things are going to be moving in that direction. But right now, this is, if nothing else, this is probably the positive outcome of this all is that people will be much more aware, and the tech companies like Google, Facebook, whatever it is, and the social media platforms will be more aware that they have to be much more, user, consumer focused in terms of their ability to identify and set out the policy up front in a much clearer way.
Jumping to a different subject for a second. Staying with Google. What happened to the Chrome ad blocker? And you hear this huge frenzy. It's coming. It's here, and then you just don't hear anything about it.
Well, I'll tell you. Let's take a step back. Yeah, I'm going to take a step back for a second because you might see for a second some fewer ads here and there on the web now because the Google Chrome did launch. They did release the ad blocker.
Right.
We all know that. And Google Chrome is, according to the most studies that I read, 56% of people prefer Google Chrome over other platforms. Right. So it's clear that are using that. They did start rolling it out, but they really did they really did it in a way that tried to do is slowly do it with the major publications, the major places that people will be reaching. So it's the major, it's the major sites that people are reading. So it could be news sites. It could be, I guess both the biggest ones, I guess, were news sites or information sites such as big journals, big
Right.
publications. So that would be the first thing. It doesn't really address it doesn't really impact your privacy specifically or the page speed. So it's like really, it's not going to change those things. It's really just meant to be is kind of eliminate the
Right.
annoying ads that people see. But I think that they did launch it and people know about it. But I also know that a lot of the efforts that they're doing now, at least, is with the publication, is that it's mostly around the United States. So the people outside the United States are still not necessarily seeing or experiencing it yet because of that.
Right.
Because they worked with the way they created this ad blocker is they kind of took what they called the Coalition for Better Ad Guidelines kind of thing, and they basically they took like sample groups from different places within this coalition of people of states and countries. And if you're not within those countries, you're not necessarily going to experience the ad blocker right away. And that's, I think, an important reason why some people outside of the the Google ad blocker, I guess we'll call it rollout, won't be experiencing it. And you and I, even if we know we don't even know what the ad blockers potentially could do, and I'll explain why. Only because the reason why I think that is because we know where the ads should be,
Right.
but we don't know where we know where the ads should be, and we know the ads could be because we've seen the annoying ads, but we don't know if the ad blocker is working or not, only because it's the whole idea is that it's supposed to eliminate that experience. So if the space is not there anymore, if the ad is not there anymore for whatever reason, it may be that it's maybe Google's or the Chrome ad blocker is being initiated, but we're not experiencing it in a way that it's not going to be like, your ad it's not shown anymore. Here's
Right.
ad blocker. Here's an example of
blank
ad blocker.
space on your screen.
Right.
Like, where's that?
Right. It's not going to be a blank space anymore. It's just going to be that it's just not there.
Right.
And whatever, and the site will be will accommodate itself because of that. So it's not going to be that we're going to see some. You're not going to be like, oh, Google ad blocker is working, kind of thing. It's not going to happen. At least I don't think that's going to be the idea here.
Right.
But I think it's more it's Google's effort, even though we know that Google and any of these platforms, all digital platforms, and there's always a conversation of we're getting something for free, so we have to be willing to accept the fact that they're using our information, targeting and providing it to publishers to better target their audiences, etc. But I think they're doing it to it goes back to the Facebook information, but it's the same issue. The issue is, can we create a policy or can we create some sort of guidelines in which the user doesn't necessarily get annoyed by the fact that ads are being presented to them, which we all have kind of accepted. At the same time, creating an experience which is positive, and that's Google's responsibility to create a positive experience without being super annoying, without being super big brother. But we know that they're watching, and we know that they're collecting and aggregating our data. That's the key here.
Is there a way to balance privacy and personalization?
I think so. I mean, listen, it's two parts. One is the balance would be for sure. One step is to for us to take every consumer and every person and every business that uses these tools is one of them is to the consumer's front is to definitely kind of be more careful or kind of review all your terms of service or all your privacy settings, which is a clear now everyone's going to be doing that. That's no question. That's the first one. The second one in terms of businesses is to make sure that the companies that you work with, whether you're the one if you're working as an agency, if the companies that you're working with, make sure that you've, reveal that this could happen, that their ad blockers might go and get initiated. And also to know that businesses have to be aware that their ads and their design and their text and their content that they're going to be, advertising, whatever the style of advertising could be blocked, and they have to be as careful as possible to avoid the blocking. But that means that they have to be more careful and more creative in terms of what they're presenting, so that way they don't fall within the either the gray area or the clear space that ad blocker is going to pick up on.
Well, I guess that's good in a way.
Yeah,
a lot of ways.
I think it's important. I think it's an important step, and I think it's natural. It's a natural progression. People love what was going on up until now. It got to an extreme, and now the extreme will just basically, it'll kind of bounce back to a point where the happy medium, which is what everyone kind of wants to have.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna jump ship to Amazon, or Amazon and Google.
Oh, this is great.
I really think that Amazon is Google's biggest competition,
Absolutely.
and in two ways. One is its advertising network and its product, the product
Right.
search.
Right.
Is Amazon Google's biggest threat? Can Google compete with Amazon's product search? Can Google, or does Amazon's advertising network actually pose a threat to Google? Is Google worried about it? What's going on?
Okay, it's a good question. In my opinion, and this is after reading a lot about it, it's clear that Amazon is the number one threat to Google in this space.
Right.
55% of searches in the U.S. come from Amazon. So you're talking, more than half the countries in the U.S., but obviously other markets as well. We all shop on Amazon. We all do our searches. The advertising platform is tiny in comparison to Google and Facebook. It's growing. So that in terms of actual platform, it's smaller, but in terms of the search itself is larger. So just to give you a sense of what's going on here, Google's advertising business is around $100 billion. Facebook is $40 billion. Amazon is around $2 billion. So we're talking, it's billions, but in relationship to, Google's $100 billion, $2 billion is insignificant, quote unquote. Sir Martin Sorrell, this is a guy who was this chief executive CEO of the world's largest ad firm, WPP. He said it actually at the World Economic Forum. He said Amazon's tentacles are spreading rapidly into all areas.
Wow. He
was basically studying, and he said that Google, it's clear that Amazon is the number one threat to Google in this case.
Right.
And he said that he actually made an interesting point that Google and Facebook are Google, Amazon, and then he said that he actually mentioned that Snapchat might be the next threat.
Really?
The biggest threat to Facebook is Snapchat, and Google and Facebook are always going to be this. They're going to be always jockeying for who has a better targeting system, a network, ad system, whatever it is. I think Amazon, like you said, product searches and their ability to really know user behaviors in a way that's not just getting them interested in buying, but rather actual people who are in the mindset of buying. Right? It's different than Facebook.
Right.
Facebook is a great platform for people to, we'll call it the lead gen, right? We'll get you to the point where you might be interested, right? But Amazon is at the point where I'm at the store already. I'm there. I'm ready to buy, and they've got the impulse buys set up. They've got what you've been looking at. They've got what you're interested in, what you saw last time, and you're in the store. You're in the supermarket, and you're ready to buy. So it's a different strength, and it's a strength that is much more in this regard targeted and tightens the circle in terms of the ability tightens the gap between intention to buy and buying. Here you're buying. There's no you go to Amazon. I don't even know what the numbers are, but I would imagine that if you go to Amazon, you're probably going to buy. You're buying something. You might buy a $5 item, and you might buy a $200 or $5,000 item, but you're going to buy something. And once you're in their store, they know how to get you to buy other things as well. That's their goal. The reason why he thinks, this is Sir Martin Sorrell said this, but I think it's an interesting conversation. Is the reason why he thinks that Snapchat is the biggest threat to Facebook is because Facebook right now, clearly in the last couple of days, is data is a big concern to people now.
Right.
And it's a short-term, like I said, it's a short-term lead gen machine. In other words, it's getting people to lead and to consider, right? But I think Snapchat in general it's this getting them to be it's that consumable content that Facebook can't really get to yet. And it's that point of engaging and getting them interested. And there was that theory of just, slow, small pieces of information and small pieces of, user-generated content, we'll call it, that is, that people start, it starts planting seeds in people's minds about what they're going to buy and whatever it is. So Facebook, in a way, this three-part, competition. Google is one thing, Amazon is another style, but Facebook and Snapchat are going to be in another area because they don't. And Snapchat is going to be that Facebook's competitor in that regard, in my opinion.
Can Snapchat make it though? I mean, they had so much trouble.
Yeah, I think the biggest issue here with Snapchat, and this is a question that always comes up, is and that is a clear question that every person gets since it's the most famous question: what is the ROI of social media?
Right.
And with Snapchat, you have the issue that the ad platform is where people are, the investors, the consumers, and the brands want to know where, if I spend my money there, how am I going to know, right? How am I going to track it? How am I going to click it? And that's where Google and Amazon have the strength to be able to track. Facebook too, but Google and Amazon can track your journey. They understand what your behavior is. Snapchat is not there yet. They're not there to say, okay, buy here, click this button, click, buy, you're out. And that's where, they're going to have to prove that. It's still out. It's the, engagement.
They tried, right? They tried upgrading it, didn't they?
They tried. And I think it's still, it's a learning curve. It's, it's a startup. They're still a startup.
Right.
Yes, they're public, but they still are in terms of the business cycle. They're still young. They're still learning, and going public doesn't necessarily change the fact that they're in the mindset of being a young company that is still learning the ropes and learning how to do that. And then, by the way, Facebook, this is the first time Facebook has many times made mistakes over the course of time in terms of what they've done and what their information, but this is the first time that they're really getting, it's new tech, ecosystem versus, classic traditional government. It's the same issue: is can the new company, young in their, in their maturity level, in this case, Facebook is a little older, but can they, in their level of maturity and level of experience, explain and also make sure that the experience is positive? And obviously for a business, so they have to create dollars and generate dollars, but can they show something beyond just eyeballs on the page, right? That's where that's the key here, right? If I want my eyeballs on the page. Right. Exactly. Welcome to the big leagues. You want to play with the big boys, you got to show that you're a big boy. You understand that engagement is important, but it's not the number, it's not the bottom line. And the bottom line is ad revenue, and ad revenue versus actual dollars being, I guess you would call it, sold, or dollars that actually been spent via your platform. And that's where I think is the, eyeballs are important, but the more important is the dollars generated from the eyeballs. That's the key here.
Can I ask you then? Was it a mistake for Snapchat to go public? Do you think? Did it add an extra level of scrutiny that it didn't need?
I think it was. Listen, I'm not involved in this one at all. I have no.
You can abstain. You can take the fifth on this one.
No, I'm not going to take a fifth. I think it's. I think that they probably want to go public to kind of give themselves a certain sense of credibility that I think people were questioning, and I think that I can understand it, and I'm not at that level in terms of understanding all the details of it. But I think it's important for Snapchat, now that they're, at that level, they've got to play with the big boys, and they've got to learn that, now they're responsible to not only their investors, they're now responsible to the public and to the SEC and all that means. And that's what Facebook is now facing with, is dealing with now. Snapchat could, in theory, be, a couple of years from now, that could happen the same thing. Now, it may not happen. And because of what's going on with Facebook's,
I would hope it wouldn't happen again.
No, it won't. It might not happen again. But I think it just opens the door for that, and I think that's an important growth metric for them, is to show that they can actually be that mature. For me, in my opinion.
So as we're waning into the final minutes, just to keep on social media for a second, Twitter, is it too saturated, and LinkedIn, is it the future?
Okay, so two great questions. In preparing for this conversation, for our chat, and with the questions that you kind of introduced me with, or introduced to me, the only ones that I didn't write out were actually these. I didn't prepare some.
So this is good. It's like this is off the cuff Holtz.
No, I think it's off the cuff. First of all, it's off the cuff. Second of all, I think it's more important is because it's the domain that I'm the most comfortable with. So I think it's really good for me to kind of talk about it out, kind of go off.
Save the best for last.
Yeah. So Twitter, I think, is not oversaturated. People think that is, but it's not as saturated. It's not as saturated as Facebook. It's also, Twitter's going through, again, every one of these companies is going through a certain sense of maturity and learning how to kind of fine tune its public display of, usage and consumerism, and kind of public display of what people are using and how they're using it. And I think it's not saturated. They've already done some correction in terms of how many people are using bots and all these, automated followers and all these kind of things, which I think is a great step in the right direction. Their ad platform, to me at least, there's a lot of strength to their ad platform versus the bigger ad platforms like Facebook and Instagram and even Google, they have a lot much more. The targeting is good and stronger, and you have the ability to basically target via hashtag, which is great because you can really do some interesting things with that. Our company did it once. We did it around a specific conference where we knew there were like 5,000 or 8,000 people in the conference using the specific hashtags. So we just targeted content to those people.
That's
and then
amazing.
so then it's much easier to do it because then you're not identifying people because everyone within that using that hashtag, unless you might be outside of the actual conference, but using that hashtag, you're all of a sudden you're identifying a trend, you're targeting the trend, and you're doing it to the people that you want to reach anyways without getting to the point of too invasive. That's the first thing. LinkedIn is a different conversation. LinkedIn is for the last 6-8 months has really gone on a total overhaul. Yesterday they started doing yesterday they started releasing memes into their
Really?
system. Yeah,
Oh
that's
boy.
exactly.
The beginning of the end?
I'm not. Yeah, I'm not necessarily sure. I'm not necessarily sure that was the right move, but I guess they have to. In their defense, I think they were late in the game in terms of changing their platform. Everyone knows that LinkedIn platform up until about 6-8 months ago was kind of like this, just a big way to just put your resume online, in some way or another. And B2B, it was a B2B platform. People were looking for for jobs, or companies were looking to hire. But now I think they've learned what people are using. So they've taken the lessons from these other companies, the other social platforms, and kind of baked it into their system better and baked it into their platform better. I think their advertising, the cost is more expensive, but the targeting and their ability to reach the right person in the right space is much stronger than maybe in this case I would say Twitter and LinkedIn have an advantage over Facebook or Google because their platform is much more targeted, and the cost may be a little bit more, but the results are stronger only because your ability to what company their and you have multiple versions of ads on LinkedIn, which are, and Twitter as well, that you can actually do is a lot stronger version, at least in my opinion. Twitter and LinkedIn, you have a much stronger experience in terms of creating the direct connection between the ad and the lead after. So
very interesting.
Yeah, it's just I think it's a maturity level that is important for LinkedIn and Twitter to get to. LinkedIn more than Twitter. Twitter is doing it. Is kind of evolving now, but Twitter is doing it, but LinkedIn has got it and is working towards creating relevancy. And it's just a matter of showing how they can take the tools and the I guess the components of their platform, whether it's video, whether it's they're now started integrating hashtags. Up until 8 months ago, who would put a hashtag on? Who would put a hashtag on LinkedIn, right?
I started seeing them. Wait, this is not Twitter, but
right.
I guess so.
Right. So I think that's also an important thing, but so I think that's it's an important step in to their credit. It's an important step to them in their development, and I think that there's they reach the LinkedIn data is much stronger in terms of if you're looking to reach the person who for a business related, not like to buy something, but more in the regard of connecting to a business, getting that lead gen. Our company did it with a very large financial startup company that was working with Fortune 500 companies, and only Fortune 500 companies. They basically, what we did there, and to see us an example of what you can be done now, is we ran an ad set that they told us that their salespeople, every salesperson is responsible for about 80 Fortune 500 companies.
Right.
And 2 weeks prior to the call, to the sales call, we would leak ads to the people they were about to call, so that you basically, and you can get to that level of targeting on LinkedIn. You might not get that on Facebook because these kind of business people might not be on Facebook actively, and they may not be on Google actively, but they will be on LinkedIn actively.
And that data is up to date usually.
Right, exactly. The data is up to date, and the data is super relevant in terms of what they're looking for, and they're the keywords, unlike Google or Facebook, keywords in business, like industry keywords. That is, whether it's micro financing or cloud monitoring or whatever it is, you may not put that on your Facebook page as Mordecai Holtz is a works in cloud monitoring, but on LinkedIn, you're going to put that on there, and that keyword is super relevant and super important for when you're targeting. So that keyword becomes your ticket to success, where you can do that. And yes, that means you're going to have to pay more for the lead in terms of cost per lead, but your result is much stronger. Your
Right.
result is much more relevant, and you can use the right keywords to get to the right people. And
Yeah.
so when we did that, the idea was to leak the information so that when the potential cold call, when we ran this ad set, when potential cold call is all of a sudden like we'll call it a lukewarm call, because this information, they've seen the name, they've seen some things on LinkedIn. So all of a sudden you've taken that relevant data, and that relevant, it only gets sent to them. It's only getting to the people that you want. And it's not using your personal information in terms of, family status or whatever it is. You're using the business information, which is really important in terms of targeting. So to me, I think LinkedIn has a strong, it's always been a B2B platform. It's changing itself to be a little bit more like, how B2B and B2C are now changing. But I think it's still going to be there. And I think that's the advantage to businesses, or will be the advantage to businesses down the line.
Well, there's definitely a lot of momentum there. And with that, our time has run out. Again, Mordecai Holtz from Blue Thread Marketing, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you.
Until next time.
All the best.
Take care.